Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin and where we're at kind of in the cycle, and how we're back at these 50-week moving averages, which we've discussed many times in the channel, especially over the last about 2 weeks. We've discussed the 50-week moving average and the 50-week exponential moving average and how they've marked the two previous lows in the last two corrections. Will they do it this time? Let's get it. Smash out the like button if you enjoy the video, and let's get on into it. So obviously a lot of fear in the market right now, right? I go on Twitter, it's absolutely hysterical, the fear that's going on in the market right now. Obviously stocks getting crushed, Bitcoin getting crushed. We got Bitcoin back down at 77,500, and if we actually zoom in, we actually got as low as 76,700 today. Now, what's interesting about that level, guys, and we've discussed this a couple times in the channel. I'm actually just going to get rid of this trend line real quick and move it over. If we actually just look at where we're at, guys, we've now entered the 50 moving average band. And we talked about this in the last live stream, in the last video that I made last week, how it's probably likely that Bitcoin's going to be coming down a little bit lower into this 50 moving average band and into this trend line, which we'll talk about in a second. But we have now gotten Bitcoin entering the 50 moving average band, which stems right now, I don't know why I said it like that, but stems between 75,500 and about 76,800. We've now entered into that 50-week exponential moving average. And why this is important, kind of just from a cycle standpoint, and we'll talk about that as well, but just to kind of look at this cycle first, each one of these Bitcoin corrections has bottomed inside the 50 moving average bands, right? We have the 50-week exponential moving average, which is the red moving average, and the 50-week just simple moving average, which is the blue moving average, right? And both of these corrections, and actually every correction that we've had in this cycle since we were able to reclaim back over here in March of 2023, each of these major corrections has bottomed inside the 50-week MA and 50-week EMA, right? And has stayed above both on weekly closes. So we kind of look at where we're at now, right? And we kind of ignore everything that's going on, right? Ignore the stock market, ignore the sentiment, kind of ignore everything else, and we just go strictly based off these. I think there's an argument that we can make that if the cycle is going to continue higher, we should see Bitcoin bottom somewhere in this band, right? Maybe we get a slight wick below, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think this is a good point where, it would make sense to see Bitcoin get some type of low in this zone, as we've seen back over here in September 2024 and August of 2024, right? We did get slight wicks below, but we did bottom in here. And in this situation, we actually just went in between and bottomed. Now, real quick, right, and we can kind of go back in previous cycles, and I'll explain this, is if we actually go back to, say, the 2020 cycle, why these are important is because typically if we break these on weekly closes, it typically marks the end of the cycle, right? And it's a simple fact of previous cycles, and maybe this time would be different. If we did break it, maybe we wouldn't go significantly lower. But, right, if we just look at the 2020 cycle, ever since the COVID crash, the reclaim, right, we stayed above it the entire cycle, right? Even in the mid-cycle, right, this huge correction that we had here, which is about like a 54% correction, the weekly closes stayed above the 50-week moving average in this circumstance, and we pushed up. And you guys can see that once we got that first weekly close below, that was kind of the definite signal that the cycle was over. We came back up, actually had a bearish retest, and really just absolutely nuked from there. Right, so breaking below the 50-week moving averages was clearly bearish right here, right, before we had a more sustained bear market to the downside. If we actually go back to 2017, I can show you guys something similar here. 2017, ever since we got above it here, right, the whole bull market, we stayed above these, right? We actually got a couple bounces in here. Once we got that first weekly close below, you guys can see that was the signal there that it was confirmed that it was over. We actually came up at another bearish retest, and right, obviously we nuked from there, right? So using these as a parameter to say, okay, if we break this, historically that's meant very, very bad things in the past. We can even go back to this one, and it's a similar circumstance. As soon as we were able to reclaim above both here, we were above it for the whole bull, right? We actually came down, had a bounce, Once we had that first weekly close below, that was the signal. We came back up, retested, confirmed over from that point for a long time, right? So what we need to watch here, and maybe this time could be different, certainly, right? But if we go back over here and we just have a non-biased view of where we are in the market and say, okay, we're still above them right now, right? We're still above them. Obviously, there's a lot of things going on in the market, a lot of fear, a lot of fear going on right now, but we are still above the 50-week exponential and 50-week simple, okay? And what we actually have, which I think is kind of interesting too, is we actually have the previous all-time high right over here at 73,700, right below this. So could there be a circumstance where if we were going to say that Bitcoin remains in a bull market, that this general zone right in here should be support, right? Just based on previous bull markets and saying that we've stayed above the 50-week exponential and 50-week simple in every single bull market, and any weekly close below meant that we were going into an extended bear. And the simple fact that the previous all-time high is coming in right there at 73,757. Should we say that this zone, if we were to remain in a bull, should be support? I think that is a very, very valid thing to say. And to say that if we were to get any closes below here would historically mean bad things, right? If we're just coming from this from a non-biased view. Above here, we're okay, right? Obviously, we gotta watch this and make sure, see, closes below here, as you've seen back in the previous 3 bull markets, has meant not great things. So as we come into this, right, I'm going to show you guys a couple different things, right? We have the moving averages, which is very, very important. And if we actually just take this trend line and we just overlay a simple trend line, you guys can see that's, just from a simple trend line point of view, just take off the moving averages real quick. You can see that this is also significant, right? 2 bounces here, 2 bounces here, and here we are again, right there at that trend line, right? So a lot of confluence coming in right here in this mid 70Ks region. A lot of confluence, right? Previous all-time high retest coming in around right below 74,000. 2 weekly 50 moving averages was historically very, very important. Huge trend line here for BTC. I think it's safe to say that this is the game between the bulls and the bears. Very, very big game right in here, right? And we can also say, just looking at a few other things coming in, very, very important as well. I was actually looking at total market cap today, and we are getting weekly closes below the previous all-time highs, guys. So that's definitely something to watch. I think Bitcoin could save this, but I think Bitcoin's kind of the saving grace in here to say, okay, Bitcoin needs to hold this region, in my personal opinion, if we are going to continue to say that Bitcoin's in a bull. Lose this, could see significant more downside for the whole entire market, and we better hope that Bitcoin bounces in this region and saves this total market cap chart, because I was kind of looking at this too, right? And just from a single standpoint of, from the COVID lows, if you just kind of match up all these lows, major lows in the market, we're also right at this general trend line for crypto total market cap. So something to keep an eye on here too, guys, if we're going to hold this zone for total market cap. As you guys can see, something I also want to talk about here too. Obviously, we had the same kind of thing for Ethereum. You guys can see what happens when you break major trend lines is you get some significant downside. So very, very important thing to watch over here on Bitcoin, on total market cap, and just a lot of things going on in this current market. And definitely something to keep an eye on here as we kind of go along into the cycle. Now, one thing I do want to say, of course, we're coming into this major zone, a major inflection point in the market right here, guys, as we have, of course, extreme fear in the sentiment. But, obviously, just because you're in extreme fear does not mean you can't go lower, right? For instance, June 2022, and I just want to make this clear because I've said this, and a lot of times extreme fears are good long-term buying opportunities, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good short-term buying opportunity. We have seen extreme fear where we've gone lower. For instance, over here in May and April of 2022, we were in extreme fear, and obviously we were in the middle of the bear market at that point, and a lot of us didn't know it at that time, right? So we're in extreme fear here does not mean we cannot go lower. So we're at just a major point sentiment-wise, major point, everything I just talked about on the chart, this zone in this low to mid 70Ks region that we talked about last live stream on Friday of why it was likely we were going to go a little bit lower. We've now come a little bit lower into this region. Now it's the test from the bulls and the bears. Can we hold this zone in here? Now, real quick, I do want to just point out Ethereum, right? And I want to show you guys this one thing on ETH real quick. Obviously Bitcoin's in a major point. ETH does still look like it wants to go lower. And it's kind of a weird thing where we got Bitcoin at such a major important level, but ETH still looks kind of heavy, right? And I just want to point out one thing of, a lot of people are saying, okay, where should I be looking to maybe buy ETH, or where should I be looking to maybe start a position on ETH? I haven't been bullish on it. Say you haven't been bullish on ETH this whole time and you want some exposure. You're looking for, the Fed to cut rates and it being a good signal to maybe get into some altcoins. I've kind of gone back and I just pulled up the RSI simply on Ethereum today, and I was just like, okay, is there any confluence on major lows on ETH? And I think, you just kind of look at the RSI, the relative strength index, simple indicator, right? It doesn't take a genius to point it out, but I kind of look at this, and when was the best time to buy ETH in the past? Was when the weekly RSI was oversold, right? Very simple thing, like nothing crazy. But if you actually look at every single time the weekly RSI was oversold for Ethereum, that marked literally cycle lows and the best buying points in the cycle, right? December 2016, first time ETH was oversold on the weekly RSI was literally the Pico low. Back over here in December 2018, right here was the Pico low. Weekly RSI hit oversold. Again, over here in 2022, it was only oversold for 1 week, and both of these was the Pico low. And if you actually look at where we're at now, we're not oversold on the weekly yet. But if we zoom in on this RSI, you guys can see that we're getting pretty close in here. Okay, so my thinking right now for ETH is maybe Bitcoin waddles around for a few weeks and we continue to see ETH go a little bit lower here. And I would love to see, my personal opinion, I think a level that I'm really looking for ETH here, and I want to see some confluence, is if ETH can continue to kind of come a little bit lower into this like 1400 to 1500 zone, which is this 2017 all-time high, and you get the weekly RSI coming and hitting that oversold point at the same time, right? So ETH coming a little bit lower, weekly RSI coming into oversold, retesting that 2017 all-time high point. That might be a level where I'm looking at Ethereum. And I haven't looked at ETH in a really, really long time. But that's a zone that I'm really looking to say, okay, get capitulation a little bit lower on ETH. Weekly RSI oversold. The 3 times that's happened in Ethereum's history were the market cycle lows. So if I get that, that's definitely a point I'll be looking to add some ETH. At this point, I'm kind of waiting to see what Bitcoin does to add anything as far as altcoins. I'm happy with a lot of my altcoin stashes right now. I kind of want to see if Bitcoin can build a little bit of support above this zone. And if it can, and maybe we see ETH bleed a little bit lower here, definitely looking to maybe add some ETH into the position, especially if we get into that oversold territory on ETH over these next few weeks. So summing up the video again, guys, right? You guys can see it. We all can see it. I explained to you why these 50 moving averages are so freaking important for Bitcoin here. Combined with the fact of this trend, this bull cycle trend line, combined with the fact of the previous all-time high retest, this zone between about 73,000 and 77,000 is massive point for Bitcoin to hold, okay? Will it hold? Bulls and bears fight. If we do get a weekly close below this, there's got to be a little bit of bias thrown out the window for this market, right? I think, just look in the past history of breaking those moving averages has not been a good sign for crypto, right? So I'm going to be watching this. If we break this, I definitely have to rethink a few things from my perspective. But as long as we continue to hold above this on weekly closes, all is good. Total market cap has broken below my major point. could signal that altcoins, especially ETH, have a little bit more bleeding to do. I would not be surprised that Bitcoin actually maybe even holds in this 73 to 77 zone. But, altcoins continue to bleed out a little bit. Probably what that tells me. But I'm definitely looking to see if I can get ETH down to this 13 to 1500 zone, get that weekly RSI oversold, and maybe add some, just like previous cycles where these weekly RSI oversold levels were all literally the Pico best buys in each cycle. So that's kind of where I'm at, guys. I don't, it's just kind of one of those things that, the cycle is kind of just doing its thing right now. We're getting a pullback. I was kind of expecting to see one more spike lower. So I don't have too much to add besides that. But now we're getting to the point where we've come into the zone I was looking for, right? We made another lower low into the 50-week moving averages. Now is the time we got to see the bulls step up, right? Will the bulls step up in here? If we do, I think we're going to have a fun time. If they don't, I don't think we're going to have a fun time, right? And maybe it's time to change a little bit of the narrative. But for now, we're above. I remain a bull on BTC. As long as we stay above these 50-week moving averages, guys, I remain a hardcore bull, despite the fact that the sentiment is very much it's so over. I will not say it's so over until we get a weekly close below this, because you could have said it's so over here. You could have said it's so over here, but both of those times were actually the best opportunity to be a bull. All right. So here we are again in the 50-week moving averages. Here we are again in extreme fear. And here we are again in a stock market correction. All right. So let's see where we're at tomorrow, guys. I'm gonna make it a video or live stream tomorrow, depending on where we are. If there's something actually happens in here besides us staying in this, mid 70K region, I'll hop on for a stream. Other than that, I'll make another video about something. But I think right now is one of those times where we're just keeping an eye on Bitcoin, right? Keeping an eye on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's daddy. We got to see the Bitcoin bulls hold in here. If we want to see anything else really get a rise. So all eyes on Bitcoin, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll catch you guys in the next one. And we'll see where our bias lies over the next few weeks. If we're Team Bula or Team Bera. I think it all comes down right here to this region right here, whether we stay Team Bula or Team Bera. For now, we're Team Bula, but that could change. All right. So I'm out of here, guys. Peace out. Much love. Catch you guys in the next one. Later.